Let's start at the beginning, and I want you to think about your first few hours in Schedule 1, or if you haven't played, just follow along. You start with almost nothing. Uncle Nelson gives you enough money to barely get started. Your first customer texts you, you scramble to get seeds, set up your first grow tent, water your plants, dry your product, package it, and deliver it on foot because you don't even have a vehicle yet. And here's the key thing. It feels fantastic. Why? Because every action has a visible, immediate result. You water the plant, it grows. You package the product, you hear the click. You hand the bag to a customer, money goes into your pocket. There's a feedback loop happening every 30 seconds and your brain loves it. Game designers call this the core loop. The basic rhythm of actions that you repeat over and over. And Schedule 1's early game core loop is genuinely one of the tightest in recent memory. But here's where it gets interesting, because Tyler didn't just design a satisfying core loop, he designed something more specific than that. He designed a progression system that slowly, carefully hands you more and more complexity, and the way he does it is actually kind of genius. I'll explain exactly how in a second, but first I need to tell you about something called the illusion of control, because Schedule 1's early game is built almost entirely on it. The rank system in Schedule 1 goes from Street Rat all the way up to Kingpin, 35 levels across 8 tiers, and at every single level, something unlocked, a new product, a new area of the map, a new tool, a new dealer you can hire, and this is a really deliberate design choice. Think about what it does psychologically. You are never not progressing, even if you're just selling the same weed you've been selling for the last hour. You're still moving toward the next unlock. The progress bar is always moving. This is the illusion of control. You feel like every decision matters, and in the early game, every decision does matter because you're still figuring out what you're doing, but the rank system is quietly creating a parallel track progress that keeps you engaged even when the actual gameplay hits a slower moment. It's not a trick, it's a good design, and it works incredibly well. Now, here's where I want to stop and ask a question that I think most people skip over. If the early game is so well designed, if the loop is tight, the progression is satisfying, the feedback is constant, then why did 64% of players vote for the rival Cartel update? Why didn't they vote for Shrooms, a new product, more early game content, more of what already works? Why did they vote for conflict, for rivals, for something that disrupts the system? The answer is in the mid-game, and the mid-game is where things get complicated. By the time you hit the mid-game in Schedule 1, your operation looks completely different from where you started. You've probably moved out of the motel. You've got a bungalow, maybe even a barn, where your production is running. You've hired employees, botanists to water your plants, chemists to mix your product, packagers to bug it up. You've got dealers out on the streets selling for you. You're laundering money through businesses, the laundromat, the post office, the car wash. On paper, this should be the best part of the game. You've built something. You're running an actual operation. But here's the crack. And I want you to notice it if you've played through this part. The more you automate, the less you have to do. And the less you have to do, the more the game starts to feel like you're just managing spreadsheets, watching numbers go up, waiting for money to accumulate so you can buy the next thing, waiting for products to move so you can buy more supplies. The core loop, the one that felt so satisfying in the early game, starts to hollow out because you're not really in the loop anymore. You've outsourced it. And this isn't a criticism of the game, by the way. This is actually a really common design challenge that every simulation game faces. The question is, what do you give players to do once they've built the machine? Because right now, in Schedule 1's mid-game, the honest answer is not enough. And Tyler knows it, the players know it, the community vote proved it. But before we get to that, I want to explain why this happens, because understanding why helps you understand what Tyler actually needs to fix. And it's not as simple as just add more content. There's a specific complaint that comes up again and again in the Schedule 1 community forums. Players saying that the mid-game becomes about delivery runs. You're constantly ordering supplies and physically driving them to your properties over and over. The same routes, the same routine. And here's the thing. In the early game, that felt meaningful. Every delivery run was part of the hustle. You were out there in the streets, running product, feeling like an actual dealer. In the mid-game, that same activity just feels like a chore. Not because the activity changed, but because you changed, and the game hasn't fully caught up to that shift. This is a design gap, and it has a name. Game designers call it the management wall. The point in a simulation game, where the player transitions from doing things to overseeing things, and the game doesn't give them enough interesting things to oversee. Schedule 1 hits this wall in the mid-game, and the way Tyler responded to it, the specific updates he built, and the way the community voted reveals exactly how he's planning to solve it. But I need to tell you about one more thing first, because the mid-game isn't just about boredom. There's something else happening that most players don't consciously notice, but that drives almost every decision they make. Schedule 1 has an addiction system. Your customers build up addiction levels over time. The more addicted they are, the more they're willing to pay. They text you more, they buy bigger orders, they're less resistant when you try to negotiate a higher price. Now, on the surface, this is just a game mechanic. Addicted customers equals more money. Straightforward. But here's what's actually interesting about it from a design perspective. This mechanic creates a completely different relationship between you and your customers, depending on what stage of the game you're in. In the early game, addiction feels like a reward. You invested time in a customer, kept them supplied, built that relationship, and now they're a reliable income stream. It feels like loyalty, like you earned something. In the mid-game, once you have employees handling sales, once the customers are being managed by your dealers rather than by you personally, that same addiction system starts to feel invisible. It's happening in the background. You're not seeing the relationship. You're just seeing the numbers. And that invisibility is a problem, because the emotional hook of Schedule 1, the thing that makes it feel different from just a management sim, is that weird, slightly uncomfortable pride you feel when your operations run smoothly, when a regular customer texts your number, when you know what they want before they ask. Once the mid-game automation kicks in, that feeling fades and players start looking for something else to feel. Which brings us back to the community vote, and I want to spend some real time on that because I think most coverage of it missed the most interesting part. When Tyler offered 3 options, Rival Cartel, Police Expansion, or Shrooms, most people just talked about which one was the most fun choice. But nobody asked the real question. What does it mean that the Cartel won by 64%? What were players actually asking for? And the answer, when you look at it through the lens of everything we just talked about, is really specific and a little surprising. Okay, so think about what each of the 3 vote options actually represents from a design perspective, not from a what sounds fun perspective, from a what does the player actually need perspective. Shrooms, that's more early and mid-game content, a new product, a new production pipeline, more of the loop that already exists, just with a fresh coat of paint. It would have been perfectly good content, but it doesn't solve the management wall, it just delays it. Police Expansion, that's more pressure on your operation, more risk, more heat, more consequences for getting caught. This one is interesting because it adds stakes, but it adds stakes to a system that already exists. It makes the current game harder, not deeper. And then there's the Rival Cartel, 64%. Here's why I think it won so decisively. It's the only one of the 3 that changes your relationship to the world. With Shrooms, you're still doing the same thing, growing, processing, selling, just a different product. With Police, you're still doing the same thing, but with more risk attached. With the Cartel, suddenly there is someone else in the world who wants what you have, someone who will take it from you if you let them, someone who makes your empire feel like an empire, because empires have enemies. Players weren't just asking for fun content, they were asking for resistance, for a reason to care about what they built, because an empire with no threats isn't an empire, it's just a balance sheet. And this is the design philosophy nobody talks about with Schedule 1. Tyler built the best early game loop in recent memory. He built a satisfying mid-game automation system, but he built a world where your success makes the game less interesting. The better you get, the less there is at stake. The safer you are, the more hollow the win feels. The Cartel update wasn't popular because cartels are cool. It was popular because players were subconsciously asking Tyler to make their success mean something again. Now, here's where this gets really interesting, because Tyler didn't just release the Cartel update and call it done. He actually redesigned systems around it in a way that points very clearly to where he's taking the late game. And once I show you what he did, you're going to understand why the Shrooms update, which came later and which players originally voted against, was actually the smartest move he's made since launch. When the Rival Cartel update dropped, it introduced something called a cartel influence system. The rival cartel controls territory, and to expand your operation into new zones on the map, you need to lower their influence. How do you do that? A few ways. You gain levels. Every level you gain gives you a spray can, and you go out and tag their territory. You get new customers, which pushes them back. You defend yourself when they ambush you. You get into shootouts with their dealers. Now, on the surface this sounds like just adding some action sequences to a simulation game, but I want you to look at what this system actually does to the progression loop. Every single one of those methods of lowering cartel influence is something you were already doing anyway. Gaining levels, getting customers, staying alive. But now those actions have a new consequence attached to them. They're not just making your numbers bigger, they're changing the shape of the map. They're pushing back a living, reactive enemy. Tyler didn't just add enemy, he tied the enemy system directly into the existing progression loop. Your normal activities now have a second layer of meaning. That's a really clean design solution, and it directly addresses the management wall problem we talked about earlier. Because now, when you're sitting in your well-automated empire watching money roll in, there's a threat existing just outside your walls. The rival cartel is always there, always applying pressure, always giving you a reason to stay engaged. So, problem solved, right? Tyler figured it out. Cartel update fixed the mid to late game. Everyone's happy. Well, not quite, because here's the thing about adding conflict to a simulation game. Conflict is exciting the first time, the second time, maybe the 10th time, but conflict that follows a fixed pattern eventually becomes just another loop, another thing to automate mentally, even if you can't automate it mechanically. Oh, that cartel is ambushing me again. Do the same thing I did last time. The cartel update bought Tyler time, and he used that time to build something that I think is genuinely the most interesting design decision he's made in Schedule 1's entire development. Remember at the beginning of the video, I said that community vote tells you everything about a design problem that Tyler never talked about publicly. Here's the other half of that story. Shrooms lost the first community vote. Players picked cartels over Shrooms. And at that time, most people thought that made sense. Shrooms seemed like just another product, more of the same. But Tyler released the Shrooms update anyway, just later, after the cartel content was established. And when he did, he didn't just add mushroom as a new drug type, he redesigned core systems around them. The Shrooms update introduced temperature as a proper management mechanic. Your production rooms now have temperature levels that affect how efficiently everything runs. Not just mushroom, everything. And to manage temperature, you have to think about your room layout, your AC place, your spatial design. And it added a heat map, a visual tool that lets you see temperature distribution across your entire operation, room by room. Do you see what happened there? Tyler took the mid-game management wall problem, players running out of meaningful decisions to make, and answered it with optimization. Not here's more stuff to do, but here's a deeper layer of the stuff you're already doing. The heat map isn't there to make the game look cool. It's there to give you something to analyze, something to improve, a measurable system you can get better at in the mid-game when you've got your operation running and you're waiting for the next big unlock. Now you can audit your layout, redesign your room, squeeze more efficiency out of the same square footage. That is a different kind of gameplay than what Schedule 1 launched with, and it points very clearly to where Tyler is taking the late game. Because here's what I think Tyler is building toward, and this is the part of this video that's going to be interesting to come back to in a year or two, because right now, it's still a theory. I think Tyler is building Schedule 1 into a game with 3 distinct modes of engagement, tied to 3 phases of progression, and he's doing it quietly, through update, without ever announcing it as a design philosophy. He's just building it. Let me show you what I mean. The early game is about hustle. Everything is manual. Every action matters. You're in the streets. You're doing it yourself. You're learning the city, learning the customer, figuring out what works. The game is teaching you through doing. There's almost no friction between what you want to do and what you can do. The loop is incredibly direct. The mid-game is about management. You've built something. Now you're overseeing it. Employees, dealers, supply chains, laundering limits, customer addiction level. The fun is in the architecture of your operation, how you've set it up, how it runs without you having to touch everything. And the late game, which is still being built, is shaping up to be about survival. The cartel is there to make sure your empire has enemies. The temperature and optimization systems are there to make sure your empire always has room to improve. And the police expansion, which players will vote on eventually, will presumably add external pressure that can disrupt everything you've built. 3 modes, 3 different kinds of fun, 3 reasons to keep players at completely different stages. And here's the thing, Tyler has never said any of this in an interview. He's never published a design design document. He talked about his vision for the game, sure. He talked about wanting to expand the map, add more content, keep updates coming, but he's never explicitly laid out this three-phase design philosophy. He's just building it, update by update, vote by vote, which actually raises a really interesting question, one I want to leave you with, because I genuinely don't know the answer yet. If Tyler is building toward this three-phase design, and I think the evidence strongly suggests he is, then there's one massive gap in the current game that he hasn't filled yet. What happened when you've won the survival phase, when the cartel is beaten back, when your operation is fully optimized, when the police raids are manageable, when you've hit Kingpin rank and there's nothing left to unlock? What then? That's the endgame question, and it's the one players in the Steam forums were already asking back in April 2025, the one Tyler himself acknowledged has plans attached to it, but hasn't fully revealed yet. And the answer to that question is going to define whether Schedule 1 becomes one of the great simulation games of all time, or whether it remains an incredibly early access experience that never quite figured out its own ending. Before I wrap up, I want to talk about something that I think gets overlooked in all of this. The fact that Tyler ran a community vote at all, the fact that he built voting infrastructure directly into the main menu of his game and let players decide what gets built next. That is a design philosophy, and it's one of the most underrated things about Schedule 1. Most developers would have looked at the management wall problem and just fixed it internally, quietly shipped an update, moved on. Tyler did something different. He asked players what they felt was missing, and the answer, 64% for the rival cartel. It told him exactly what phase of the game felt hollow. It told him where players were dropping off emotionally. And then he built the cartel update. And then, crucially, he built the SHROOMS update, which addressed a different problem that the vote revealed indirectly. Because SHROOMS losing the first vote didn't mean players didn't want depth. It meant they wanted conflict first, optimization second. They wanted to feel the threat before they started optimizing against it. That ordering matters. Tyler read it correctly, and the sequencing of updates since then reflects that reading. That's not luck. That's a developer who is genuinely listening, not just to what his community is asking for, but to what their choices reveal about what they actually need. And I think that's the design philosophy nobody talks about with Schedule 1. It's not the core loop. Plenty of people have talked about the loop. It's not the automation systems or the rank progression. It's the fact that Tyler is using his community as a real-time design feedback mechanism. Every vote is a signal. Every update is a response. Every new system either addresses a gap the community revealed or sets up the next gap for the next vote to reveal. The game is being designed in public, in collaboration, in a way that almost no studio, indie or otherwise, has pulled off successfully before. And if Tyler can solve the endgame question, if he can figure out what happens after the cartel is beaten and the optimization is maxed and the police raids are managed, Schedule 1 might end up being remembered as something genuinely important. Not just a great indie game, but a template for how to build a game slowly, carefully, with your community as your co-designer. At the start of this video, I said that when players reach the endpoint of Schedule 1's current content, the game kind of breaks. Not technically, but emotionally. I hope now you understand why. And more importantly, I hope you understand that Tyler understands why, too. Because every update since the cartel vote has been a step toward an answer. We started with, what does the community vote reveal? And the answer turned out to be a lot. It revealed the management wall. It revealed that players want their success to feel threatened. It revealed that optimization matters, but only after conflict gives it context. And it revealed that a 22-year-old solid developer from Sydney might just be building one of the most thoughtfully designed simulation games in recent memory. Not bad for a drug dealing sim. If this video gave you something to think about, drop a comment. I want to know, where did you hit the management wall in Schedule 1? What rank were you when the game started to feel hollow? And if you haven't played it, does this kind of design analysis make you want to? Subscribe if you're new. And if you want me to go deeper on any of the specific systems we talked about today, the addiction mechanics, the temperature optimization, the cartel influence system, let me know. There's a lot more to unpack. See you in the next one.